When we think about digital security, we usually picture it like a fortress.
Right, like a big castle.
Yeah, exactly. You build this massive steel door, which is your password, and maybe add some multi-factor authentication. And as long as you make that door complicated enough, you assume your data is completely safe.
You do. But I mean, what if the attacker doesn't even care about your massive steel door?
Right.
What if they just, wait in the shadows for you to unlock it, walk inside, and then they slip in right behind you through an open window?
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are pulling a stack of official cybersecurity training curricula, specifically focusing on the EC Council's certified ethical hacker materials to look at the art of session hijacking.
It's a fascinating topic because it completely flips our standard understanding of perimeter security on its head.
It really does. We're going to demystify how attackers don't necessarily need to crack your passwords or trick you into handing over your credentials. They literally just need to hijack your active connection midstream.
Right, getting past the login screen is really only the beginning of the battle. The real vulnerability often lies in how the system remembers you after that initial handshake.
Exactly. So whether you are logging into your online banking or maybe a remote work portal or a cloud database, understanding this concept is the key to knowing why certain security protocols are actually the only things saving your digital identity. The ones that often feel like super annoying friction.
Yeah, those annoying timeouts actually have a purpose.
They really do. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really understand the mechanics here, we have to draw a hard line between standard hacking, which relies on guessing or stealing credentials, and session hijacking.
Okay, so what's the core difference for the listener?
Well, in a standard spoofing attack, the goal is authentication. The attacker wants the system to verify who they are from the ground up. But in session hijacking, the attacker bypasses that authentication phase entirely. Completely. They rely on a valid user, meaning you, to do the heavy lifting of logging in. Once you're verified, the attacker displaces you and takes over that already validated active connection.
Before we get into the crazy technical mechanics of how they actually pull that displacement off, we need a solid mental model of what a session actually is.
Right, because HTTP, the foundation of the web, is inherently stateless.
Meaning it has no memory, right?
Exactly. Every time you click a link or submit a form, the server treats you like a complete stranger. That stateless nature is sort of the root of the problem here.
So to keep you logged in as you navigate from, say, your account dashboard to your settings page, the server has to create a workaround.
Right. When it successfully authenticates you the very first time, it generates and sends your device a session identification token.
Because the heavy cryptographic authentication only happens at the very start of the TCP connection.
Yep. So that token acts as a continuous proxy for your identity. Every subsequent request your browser makes includes that token to prove, that you are still the authorized user.
Which brings into focus the functional difference between spoofing and hijacking. Let's say we have an attacker named John and a victim named James.
Okay, classic scenario.
Right. If John steals James's username and password through a phishing email and then logs in as James from his own computer to start a brand new session, that's spoofing.
Yes. John is pretending to be James from the very start. Hijacking is far more insidious.
Because John doesn't have James's password.
Exactly. John waits for James to log in himself. Once James's session is active and that token is generated, John violently displaces him. He seizes that token to take over the existing connection.
It makes me think of a theme park.
Oh, how so?
Well, spoofing is like an attacker stealing your driver's license to buy a ticket at the front gate so they can walk in pretending to be you.
Okay, I like this.
But hijacking is the attacker waiting in the bushes for you to buy your own ticket, get inside the park, and then they just tackle you, rip the access wristband off your arm, and go ride the roller coasters. And the park staff still blindly assumes they're you because, they have the wristband.
That analogy perfectly isolates the vulnerability. The wristband is the session token. And this tactic thrives on fundamental flaws in how systems handle those wristbands.
Like what kind of flaws?
Well, attackers exploit lack of account lockout policies or indefinite session timeouts. You know that convenient little remember me box you click?
Oh yeah, the one that keeps you logged in for weeks.
Right, that keeps the token alive for weeks. They also hunt for weak session ID algorithms where the tokens are mathematically predictable.
Or legacy environments where the network traffic simply lacks basic encryption, leaving the tokens exposed in plain text.
Exactly. So let's move from the theoretical to the mechanical. How do attackers actually knock you over and steal that digital wristband at the fundamental network level?
Because this is where they have to manipulate the underlying rules of the internet.
Yeah. Network-level hijacking is a fascinating beast because it targets the TCP or UDP protocols directly. The attacker doesn't need to tailor their attack to a specific web application's code base.
They just attack the network pipes themselves.
Precisely. This generally unfolds in three broad phases. You have tracking the connection, desynchronizing the connection, and injecting the attacker's forged packets.
That second phase, the desynchronizing, is wild to me.
It's pretty clever. So TCP keeps track of the data flowing back and forth using sequence numbers and acknowledgement numbers.
Right. The server and your computer are maintaining state by numbering every packet sequentially, ensuring no data is dropped or received out of order.
Exactly. So the attacker's goal is to intentionally disrupt that shared sequence. They will flood the connection with null data or inject a reset packet, an RST packet, directed at the server.
And in the exact same millisecond, they forge a new connection with the server using a completely different sequence number.
Right. Suddenly, the server and your computer are entirely out of sync. The server expects packet number 500, let's say, but your computer is sending packet 200.
So the server gets confused by your legitimate traffic, drops your connection, and starts communicating exclusively with the attacker's synchronized stream. That's crazy.
It is, but it gets more complicated.
Yeah, I have to push back on the mechanics of the blind hijacking method mentioned in the materials.
Okay, let's hear it.
Blind hijacking assumes the attacker isn't on the same network as the victim. They can't see the acknowledgement packets coming back from the server.
Right, they are flying blind.
Which means they literally have to blindly guess the exact sequence numbers the victim's host is expecting. Isn't the internet moving way too fast with thousands of packets per second for someone to just casually guess the exact sequence number a computer expects at that specific microsecond?
You are entirely right to question the feasibility there. Blind hijacking is incredibly difficult without highly specialized automated tools firing off thousands of spoofed packets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even then, you're trying to hit a moving target in the dark. But if the attacker is on the local network, say, sitting at the same airport coffee shop as you, the game changes completely.
Oh, because they don't have to guess at all.
Exactly. They don't have to guess.
Because they can just sniff the local traffic and read the next sequence number directly.
Precisely. They monitor the NSN perfectly. And to guarantee they see that traffic, they utilize a technique called ARP cache poisoning.
Ah, address resolution protocol.
Yes. ARP is how devices on a local network map IP addresses to physical MSE addresses. By flooding the local network switch with forged ARP replies, the attacker corrupts the mapping tables.
So they basically lie to the network.
They do. They tell the router, my machine is the victim, and they tell the victim, my machine is the router.
They literally rewrite the local map so all the traffic flows physically through their laptop before it even reaches the internet.
Right. At that point, they aren't guessing the sequence numbers. They're acting as the mailroom, opening every package, reading the sequence numbers, and dictating the conversation.
Wow. But network-level hijacking requires deep technical precision and puts a lot of noise on the network, right?
It does, which is why attackers often prefer a much stealthier route, which is application-level hijacking.
Okay, so instead of attacking the complex TCP network pipes, they target the HTTP session directly. They focus entirely on acquiring that theme park wristband.
Yes. Application-level hijacking zeroes in on the session ID token itself. Attackers generally acquire it in one of three ways. They steal it, they guess it, or they brute force it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The guessing and predicting methods highlight some staggering developer oversights, don't they?
Staggering is a good word for it. A session token is supposed to be a cryptographically secure random string. But some web frameworks rely on incredibly weak pseudo-random number generators, or PRNGs.
And this is where it gets incredibly frustrating. There are actual enterprise sites out there that literally use sequential tokens.
Yes. It's hard to believe, but it happens.
So an attacker creates their own account, logs in, and observes that their assigned token is 1001. They can confidently deduce that the very next person to log into that web application will be handed token 1002.
Exactly. They don't need to hack anything. They just swap their token for 1002 and refresh the page.
That is just lazy design.
It is. We also see timestamp-based tokens. A system might use a format combining a username and the exact date and time, like user 123-224-06 Loman T 1234.
Right, so if an attacker reverse engineers that underlying format, the next token is mathematically predictable.
Exactly. It ceases to be a secure key and becomes nothing more than a clock.
And if the token space is small enough, say the web developer decided a 4-digit number from 0000 to 9999 was secure enough, the attacker can easily brute force it.
Yep, especially if the application lacks robust rate limiting.
Meaning it doesn't temporarily ban an IP address for guessing wrong too many times. So an attacker's automated script can just fire thousands of attempts per minute.
They just hammered the server with variations of a string, trying VW304221015189009, then the next one, until the server finally accepts one as valid.
A massive corporation could spend millions on next-generation firewalls, but none of it matters if the internal web developer decides the secret access key is just today's date and a sequential integer.
The security chain is truly only as strong as its weakest link. But if we assume the developers do everything right, they deploy perfectly random, mathematically secure, heavily encrypted, long-string tokens, attackers don't just throw their hands up.
No, they pivot.
Exactly. They stop trying to break the math and start exploiting browser mechanics and human psychology.
So if the token is too complex to guess, the attacker has to trick the system or the user.
The most straightforward approach is session replay.
Right. If an attacker manages to eavesdrop on an unencrypted connection, they just capture your perfectly secure token as it travels across the network.
They don't need to understand the cryptography behind it. They simply send that exact same token later to gain unauthorized access, literally replaying your authentication phase.
But when eavesdropping isn't an option?
Then they move to session fixation. What's fascinating here is how it bypasses the need to steal anything from the victim.
Because instead of intercepting your token, the attacker legally requests a valid session ID from the target server and then forces that specific token onto you.
Exactly. The attacker goes to a banking website, starts a session, and the bank hands them a valid ID, like 0D6441 FEA4496C2.
And then the attacker sends you a highly targeted phishing email with a lure, maybe like a fake fraud alert from your bank.
Yep. And embedded in the URL of that link is the session ID the attacker just generated. You click the link, your browser is taken to the real bank's login page, and you type in your actual credentials.
So you successfully authenticate with the bank.
Wow.
But because you arrived via the attacker's tailored link, your browser happily uses the session ID the attacker provided to establish the authenticated state.
Right. The attacker doesn't have to break your password or guess your token. They already possess the token because they are the ones who handed it to you.
Wow.
They simply refresh their own browser, and the bank grants them full access to your newly authenticated account.
That is terrifying. And if that doesn't work, attackers use the exact inverse, right? Session donation.
Yes. The attacker gives you their own session ID, but the goal is different. You click a link, and without realizing it, you are now operating within the attacker's logged-in session.
So when you start entering private data, like typing in your credit card to make a purchase or updating your password, you are actually saving all of that sensitive information directly into an account the attacker controls.
Exactly. These tactics perfectly illustrate why clicking links in unsolicited emails is so dangerous, even if the domain legitimately belongs to a service you use. The URL parameters themselves can be weaponized.
Right.
But we also have to dive into client-side attacks, which execute maliciously right inside your local browser.
Cross-site scripting, or XSS, is a major player here.
It is. The attacker finds a vulnerability on a legitimate website. Maybe a comment section that doesn't properly sanitize user input. They inject a payload of malicious JavaScript.
And when you visit that otherwise safe page, your browser executes the script.
Exactly. That hidden JavaScript quietly accesses your document.cookie file, reads your active session tokens, and silently transmits them to an external server controlled by the attacker.
And then there's cross-site request forgery, or CSRF, which operates on a completely different premise.
Yeah, it doesn't bother stealing the cookie at all. It exploits the browser's own inherent helpfulness. It exploits ambient authority.
Because your browser is designed to automatically append your session cookies to any outgoing request destined for the domain that originally set them.
Right.
So if you are logged into your bank in one tab and you open a malicious website in another tab, the attacker can place a hidden HTML tag on their site. Maybe it's an invisible image pixel.
Yep. But the source URL for that image isn't a JPEG. It's a functional command directed at your bank, like bank.com/transfer, amount equals 1,000, enter equals attacker.
So when your browser attempts to load that invisible image, it sees the destination is bank.com. Acting exactly as designed, it automatically attaches your active banking session cookie to the request.
And the bank server receives the transfer command, sees a perfectly valid authenticated session token attached to it, and processes the unauthorized transaction.
You never even see it happen. And from the server's log perspective, you requested it yourself.
Exactly. But perhaps the most terrifying client-side vector is the man-in-the-browser attack.
Oh, man. This utilizes a Trojan horse, often disguised as a helpful browser extension, installed locally on your machine.
Yes. It transparently manipulates the document object model, the DOM, altering the underlying code of the web page while you are looking at it.
So it operates by hooking directly into the browser's application programming interfaces.
Right. It intercepts your actions after you click submit, but before the data is encrypted and pushed out to the network.
Okay, so let's say you log into your bank and initiate a transfer of $100 to a friend.
The Trojan intercepts that web request mid-flight. It silently rewrites the destination routing number to the attacker's account and changes the amount to $1,000.
The server processes the fraudulent transaction and sends back a receipt confirmation.
Yep. The Trojan then intercepts that incoming receipt, rewrites the DOM back to the original values, and renders a screen showing you successfully sent $100 to your friend.
You are completely blind to the theft because your screen shows exactly what you expected to see.
Exactly. This method completely circumvents advanced security mechanisms like two-factor authentication.
Because the server sees a request originating from your established authenticated session on your trusted device, passing all security checks.
The compromise happens locally, inside the very software you use to view the web.
I can hear a lot of people thinking, well, this is why I look for the little padlock icon. I only use HTTPS.
Right, people trust the padlock.
Yeah. My connection is heavily encrypted, so none of this network snooping should matter. Well, even heavily encrypted sessions are vulnerable to highly sophisticated hijacking methods. The crime attack is a perfect example.
It really is. CRIME stands for Compression Ratio Info Leak Made Easy. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the broader evolution of the web, it demonstrates how the constant demand for faster load times inherently introduces new vulnerabilities.
Because crime specifically exploits the deflate data compression algorithm used within SSL, TLS, and HTTPS connections.
Exactly.
I want to walk through the mechanics of this one because it is mind-bending. When data is sent over HTTPS, it is often compressed to save bandwidth before the encryption cipher is applied.
Right, and compression algorithms like deflate work by finding repeated strings of characters and replacing them with much shorter pointers.
So because of how this shrinking works, an attacker can figure out your secret encrypted cookie just by monitoring the microscopic changes in the size of the encrypted packets.
Yes. The attacker uses a malicious script to trick your browser into repeatedly sending requests to the server, and in those requests, the attacker injects slightly different plaintext characters.
They cannot break the encryption to read the response, but they can measure the exact total length of the resulting encrypted payload. It is exactly like trying to guess a secret word written on a piece of paper sealed inside a thick, opaque envelope. You can't open the envelope and you can't see through the paper.
I love this analogy.
However, you are allowed to constantly slip new pieces of paper with single letters on them into the envelope, and then you weigh the envelope on a microscopic scale. If you slip in a letter that happens to match a letter already in the secret word, the magical physics of this specific envelope compress the matching letters together, making it weigh slightly less.
Exactly.
So by observing the total length of the network packet dropping, say, from 384 bytes down to 376 bytes, the attacker deduces, byte by byte, exactly what the encrypted session cookie contains.
It is a brilliant and devious application of cryptography and data analysis. And crime isn't the only way encrypted sessions fall apart. We also see vulnerabilities like the forbidden attack.
The forbidden attack. That sounds ominous.
It is. This is a man-in-the-middle attack that specifically targets the TLS handshake. You know, the cryptographic process that establishes the secure HTTPS connection in the first place.
Right. It targets the AES-GCM encryption cipher, specifically exploiting a catastrophic failure in how the system handles a cryptographic nonce.
And a nonce is simply a number used once. In Gauss counter-mode encryption, the nonce is a random initialization value meant to ensure that every single encrypted session is mathematically unique, even if the underlying plaintext data is identical.
So if a server or application has a flaw, It incorrectly reuses that exact same nonce across multiple sessions.
The underlying math of the encryption shatters.
Wow.
Reusing the nonce allows the attacker to execute an XOR operation on the ciphertext, which strips away the confidentiality.
So the attacker can then hijack the HTTPS session and inject forged malicious content directly into the secure stream.
Exactly. They can insert a realistic pop-up into your encrypted banking page, asking you to re-verify your social security number.
And because the browser's padlock icon is still securely locked, you have every reason to believe the request genuinely came from the bank.
These sophisticated attacks prove that security is never a static achievement. Every new feature engineered to make the internet faster, like data compression, or more convenient, like persistent cookies, introduces a new variable that attackers will rigorously test, dissect, and exploit.
So what does this all actually mean for how we interact with the web? We've covered a massive amount of ground here.
We really have.
We've seen that session hijacking proves logging in is only half the battle. Attackers are desynchronizing network pipes with RST packets, sniffing local ARP tables, predicting mathematically weak tokens, tricking your browser's ambient authority with hidden image tags, and even weighing the microscopic byte size of compressed packets to extract encrypted data.
It's a lot to take in.
Maintaining a secure connection requires constant evolving vigilance on both the network layer and the application layer.
Yeah, and for you, the listener, understanding these mechanics provides crucial context for your daily digital life.
Absolutely.
This is precisely why your banking portal forces a hard time out after 5 minutes of inactivity. It's why you get those constant, seemingly annoying prompts to re-authenticate with your password or Face ID when you attempt to change a setting or update your address.
And it is the underlying mechanical reason why cybersecurity professionals relentlessly warn you against clicking on random promotional links, even if the domain looks perfectly legitimate.
The attackers aren't necessarily trying to steal your password, they are trying to weaponize or steal your active session token.
It really makes you look at that little web browser cookie completely differently.
It sure does.
We've spent this whole time talking about digital tokens, these temporary text files your computer passes back and forth to prove you are who you say you are. But what if we move to a future of continuous physical biometrics?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Right. If your device constantly scans your face or monitors your unique heartbeat pattern to maintain a session state instead of relying on a tiny text file, would session hijacking finally become a relic of the past? Or would attackers just find a terrifying new way to intercept and spoof your continuous biological signature midstream?
That is the million-dollar question that will define the next decade of cybersecurity architecture.
Something to think about the next time you are tempted to click Remember Me for 30 days.